A lively souvenir. A lively souvenir. We were on very good terms with our neighbors of about 4 years in our San Diego, California neighborhood. We invite each other over for barbecues, and Joe and I frequently sit in front of a TV somewhere on Sundays to watch a football game or two. Our wives, Annette and Ellie, are in a book club together, work out at LA Fitness, and enjoy poetry reading events. Last summer, we upgraded our backyard and had a pool put in. Nothing massive, just your standard 16 at 32 family pool. It was quite the hangout for both our families. Joe and Elle recently returned from visiting family in Gainesville, Florida. We all convened at their back patio for the celebratory end of their vacation to sip mimosas and Hefeweizens while they gave us all the highlights of their trip. They were excited about the resort they visited and the swampland tours they took there. They were like big kids describing how the airboat driver whipped them through the swamp, even giving them an extra thrill by Tokyo drifting on the sharp turns. Sounds like a lot of fun, Annette replied. Well, that's not the best part. We've found a bit of a souvenir. Really? Oh yeah, Joe said proudly. I'll get it, Ellie said as she disappeared into the house. I know initially you guys are going to think we're nuts, but I assure you, this is going to be great. Wow, Joe, Donald said. This is quite the build-up. The anticipation is killing us over here. Right then, Ellie emerged with a mid-sized glass tank. Wah! Donald exclaimed. He can't believe what he's seeing. No way! You guys can't be serious, said Annette. That's crazy, guys. In the glass case, there was a 2.5-foot alligator. Isn't he beautiful? Ellie beamed. He's already grown a couple of inches since we've been back. Whoa, I was actually thinking you brought back a snake or maybe an iguana. But you went all the way back to the evolutionary source. A fucking alligator, Don said. No way this is safe. Elle, no way, Annette cautioned. She was concerned, and her voice shook with emotion as she tried to implore her friend to abandon this idea. This thing is gonna grow and eat you guys. No, this is a terrible idea, sweetie. No, it's okay. We thought this through, John explained, and made an informed decision. This wasn't an impulse buy. I don't know, buddy. It looks like an impulse buy with teeth. Don chided them. They all laughed, except Annette. How did you even come across somebody selling an alligator, Joe? I mean, I know it's Florida, but people aren't just selling these at the 7-Eleven. She asked. Joe explained how part of the habitat tour involved observing the local wildlife, including gators. They also breed them there. This alligator was part of a litter that was to be raised within the wildlife preserve, but unfortunately, it was a runt. He was too small to compete with his siblings for food, and eventually they would turn on him and consume him as well. The staff were going to have to put him down. This completely exacerbated Ellie, and after some conversation, a disclaimer, and cash, she somehow convinced the preserve owner to allow them to take the little guy with them. And you were okay with this, Joe? Don asked incredulously. Joe shrugged his shoulders. I didn't see any issues with it being so small right now. I guess I kinda kicked the can down the road as far dealing with him getting to be full-sized. As it was explained to us, they are very loyal and highly intelligent. Once domesticated, they are just like dogs or goats. Wait, Annette asked. How did you get it on the plane? Well, the preserve owner wrapped it for travel and fed it, and we just added wet towels over it and placed it in our checked bags. You ran it through baggage claim? Have you seen how they treat those suitcases? Don asked, almost laughing in disbelief. Oh, yes. And I was so worried about the little guy. I could hardly contain my anxiety the whole flight. I hoped he wasn't too scared. I told her, "Hey, honey, it's a reptile. They're not scared of anything." My wife and I stood there, perplexed. This has got to be the dumbest idea in the history of dumb ideas. Yet here they sat, two highly educated adults carrying on about one of the most dangerous animals on the planet, like it's a long-haired lab puppy. I have to ask some grown-up questions. I steal a glance at my wife with a raised eyebrow, and she shrugs, effectively giving me the go-ahead. Joe? Firstly, how in the world do you domesticate an alligator? Is there like a shock collar? Here, when I zap you, it means don't bite my finger off? I mean, come on. Ha ha. I hear the sarcasm, Don. No. As you feed him, he gets used to your scent and your presence. He begins to associate you with food and satisfaction. It's all positive reinforcement. He bonds with you. Yeah, just like a dog, like we said. He won't bite the hand that feeds him silly. Ellie chimed in. He eats chicken, mostly. But we can throw in some fish, rodents, steak, and even pork, to give him a variety. They guy gave us a pamphlet for use as a reference, so you read Alligators for Dummies. And you think that prepared you? Annette asked. I can't believe I'm hearing this. Did you say rodents? You feed it rodents? Are you going to buy a shoebox full of mice and dump it in his glass case? Oh, don't be so crude, Don. Of course not, Joe said nervously, as he rubbed the back of his neck. Well, not exactly a box full. You really are going to go through with this? How long before he grows up to be a fully carnivorous reptile? There's some exotic animal farms around. We can relocate him too, when the time comes. For a fee, they'll come and collect him, humanely, of course, and he'll live out his days at the California Preserve. Dude, is this even legal in California? Can animal control fine you or come confiscate it? Well, it's an ask for forgiveness instead of permission kind of thing. We aren't breeding it or selling it for a profit, so therefore it's characterized as an exotic pet, in my opinion. It's no more illegal that Tyson having a tiger or Michael Jackson having a chimpanzee. But this is an alligator, Joe. Annette pleaded outwardly with her friends. This is a cold-blooded beast. Every incident I have ever seen involves an alligator snapping, its jaws shut on some unsuspecting body part of the owner or trainer. We are trying to get you to see that this will end badly. You and Ellie are putting yourselves in danger. Annette's hands were on her hips, as she's clearly frustrated. We can't seem to talk any sense into our friends. Look, guys, I hear you, but we'll be fine. Come here. Joe stood and put his arms out, and he, Dawn, and Annette had a group hug. "Aw, there. That's so much better," Ellie said. "I know. We appreciate your concern. You're good friends, and you have raised some thoughtful questions, and I would expect no less. But friends, don't worry. This is gonna be a great experience. Alex and us will grow to be..." "Wait," Dawn interrupted. Alex? Alex Alligator? Really, Joe? It absolutely fit like a glove. And when I called him that, his little eyelids flipped. "I think he likes it," Ellie added. She reached in and stroked the back of its head. "You want to hold it? Here, it's okay. Let me just get him situated." She set the glass case on the table and reached in and grabbed its tail with her right hand and slid her left hand forward to grasp it under its jaw. But something must have spooked it. It let out a high-pitched snarl and spun its head, and with its tiny but razor-sharp teeth clamped down on Ellie's forefinger and thumb. Blood immediately spurted outward as Ellie screamed and knocked the glass case off the table, which exploded when it hit the patio. Alex didn't fall. However, he hung on to Ellie's flesh, dangling and thrashing with all its body weight, as if trying to rend her flesh from her. Blood started squirting out of its jaws as it whipped its body from side to side. Ellie grabbed at it and tried to pull it off, but it was dug in, and she screamed even louder. Joe grabbed its body and pulled, but it was clamped down deep, and pulling it made the flesh of Ellie's thumb started to rip from her hand, making her cry out more. Ellie collapsed onto the patio, screaming incoherently, as the gator's face was now bright red with the free-flowing blood from Ellie's mangled hand. Annette grabbed a big hunk of glass and began hitting it on its head. 1 blow, 2 blows, 3 blows. Finally, the gator released its grip, rolled over onto the patio, and scurried away. "Oh, Ellie, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," Joe said as he pulled off his shirt and attempted to stem the flow of blood from Ellie's marred flesh. Her thumb was only hanging on by 2 tendons, and half the flesh from her index finger was tattered and torn. He wrapped it up with his shirt. "Dawn, put pressure here, please," Joe said, almost in tears. Annette had both hands covering her mouth and was wide-eyed with disbelief as Ellie moaned and cradled her hand. She was growing visibly pale and going into shock, no doubt. Joe called 911, while Annette comforted Ellie. Dawn quietly wondered if they'd be able to save her thumb or not. How could this thing have turned so deadly so fast? Shit, he thought. Speaking of deadly, where is that little fucker? Joe, did you see where it went? No, I didn't. The little bastard's probably terrified, hiding in some cubbyhole somewhere. The dispatcher is sending animal control, but maybe we can bag it before it gets away. Damn, I fucked up, Dawn. I'm such a fuck-up, he said in a frustrated tone. What was I thinking? Hey, let's focus. No time for that now, buddy. I'll run to my house and get a spotlight real quick. So Dawn went out their back fence and crossed over onto his property. He unlatched the back fence and headed for his tool shed on the other side of the pool, when lo, and behold, there was Alex. He was casually floating in their pool. There was a red stain afloat around him, apparently Ellie's blood. But Alex was totally oblivious to the carnage he caused. He's merely enjoying the cool water. Dawn doesn't know why, but he thought about the story of the scorpion and the frog. What did they expect? He's an alligator. As Dawn approached the pool, Alex seemed to sense his presence and slowly paddled towards the edge of the pool, towards Dawn. Wait, what's this? What are you doing, little guy? It turned, its body exposing its tail, and made a cooing sound. Please don't let this be the second dumbest thing that happens today. Dawn squatted down and gently reached under the gator and scooped it up, holding it under its head and tail. He made sure to keep a firm grip on Alex and not expose any appendages that may trigger it. You need to be with your own kind, runt or not. He actually kinda liked the little guy. But yeah, it's time to go. You've caused enough trouble today. He heard the sirens approaching and headed back to Joe's house. Car radio. The silence is deafening. Finley stares at the empty slot where the radio should be. The hole in the center console mocks him. The engine roars and jumps to life. Finley laughs at the power and presses the gas pedal. The engine responds and races down the street. He sighs and shrugs off the silence. At least it's a nice car, he thinks to himself. Finley grips the steering wheel tighter and continues to drive. He's never driven a convertible before. The large amount of snacks sits in the passenger seat. 3 bags of chips, several candy bars, a meat stick, a couple of grape sodas, Red Bull, and an orange Gatorade are piled into a small mountain next to Finley. There is also $437 in his pocket. Finley glances at the convenience store in the rear view mirror as he drives away. The gun wasn't loaded, but the clerk behind the desk didn't need to know that. She graciously gives up her drawer in exchange for her life. Finley smiles as the memory of the robbery passes through his head again. Everything in the drawer, now, he shouts. The clerk cries, but nods in understanding and opens the register. Ding. This is much easier with a gun, thinks Finley. He grins under his mask. He holds the basket of snacks in his free hand and points the gun at the clerk. Ida is the name on her shirt. She's short with straight black hair and small eyes. Tears run down her cheeks as she collects the bills. With a shaky hand, she gives the money to Finley. "Thank you," Finley decides to say. He runs out the store and watches as a Chevrolet Corvette pulls up to the store. An older gentleman shuts off the engine and opens the door to get out. He sees the gun before he sees Finley. "Give me the keys," Finley says loudly to the man. The elderly man jumps in surprise and quickly hands the keys to Finley. Finley dumps the basket of snacks into the passenger seat, puts the car in reverse, and drives down the road. When he is clear of the scene, he pulls off his mask and tosses it on the floor. He goes to adjust the radio, but the dial isn't there. The whole compartment is empty. Finley is an average man with an average build. His curly locks meet his eyebrows and licks his earlobes. His eyes are wide and too big for his narrow face, close together with long lashes. Stubble on his chin creeps its way up to his sideburns. The long bridge of his nose flares into broad nostrils, and his big pink lips pushes out from his face. He has a birthmark in the shape of a small diamond under his left eye. His cheeks are freckled and covered with a thin layer of dirt. Finley prefers Xbox over PlayStation and drinks apple juice more than a grown man should. He hates roller coasters because he has to sit next to strangers. He loves school, but dropped out his senior year. Finley is passionate, creative, and extremely intelligent. Finley wasn't always a thief, but the worst in his life brings out the best in him. Did I forget to feed Edison? Finley thinks to himself. Edison is his pet goldfish, who spends his days in a sphere on Finley's nightstand. Finley's hamster died in a freak vacuum accident when he was in kindergarten, and since then, he was against pets. Edison was a prize Finley had reluctantly won at a carnival. So far, he's lasted over a year and tripled in size. Finley tugs nervously at his Iron Maiden shirt as he passes a cop. He checks his speed and cautiously pulls the seatbelt over his chest and clicks it into place. He thinks, "Don't pull me over, please." He isn't ready to deal with the police. He hasn't thought this far ahead. The officer turns left and into a gas station. Finley sighs, relief, and looks back at where the radio should be. It's too quiet for him. His thoughts float carelessly through his head. He pictures himself as a police officer for a moment and laughs at the thought. If his dad was around, or if his mother stopped drinking, if his brother never beat him, and if he stayed in school. He wondered where his life would have been then. What kind of person he would be now. An outstanding citizen, he imagines, with a wife and kids. He creates the vision of his family in his head. A woman with large breasts and red hair. 2 kids, 1 boy and 1 girl, with toothless smiles on their dirty faces. They would be soccer players, like Finley was, and always outside. He shakes off the thought. Sucks not having a radio, he thinks. He sits up taller in the driver's seat and lets out a little scream. Ah! He relaxes and slumps back into his seat. He tries to whistle and fails, only allowing air to escape his pursed lips. He blows a tune through his teeth and grunts in frustration. I wish I knew how to whistle. Both my parents could. Even Franklin can, he says in his head. He tries again, and a small tweet of a sound flies from in between his lips. He grins at his small accomplishment. I hate tuna fish, he thinks. Finley starts to space out behind the wheel. The lack of sound tricks his brain. He visualizes a concert he went to last year. He remembers all the pockets he picked and wallets he stole. He made 5 times the amount of the cost of the tickets he paid for, but wasn't able to enjoy the concert properly. The songs of the band echoes throughout his mind. He taps the steering wheel to the beat of the song stuck in his head. He hums the melody. He looked back at the center console and sighed loudly. There wasn't even a clock. What time is it? He wondered. I should have stolen a watch. Or a car with a radio. The car was quiet. Even the purr of the engine was hushed. Everything is still, except the thoughts in Finley's head. He thinks about the graduation he never attended. The smell of his last girlfriend right before she walked out the door. The taste of sea salt ice cream and how it was superior to any other flavor. He pictures the last family photo they had together when times were good. How Franklin had his arm around him in a rare, loving embrace. It is loud in Finley's head, and there is no sound to hide behind. He groans and tries to shake off all his thoughts, clear his head. It's no use. The thoughts always come back, stronger and louder than before. He is going mad from the silence. I can pull the steering wheel. It would be easy to wreck such a nice car. The guardrail teases Finley. He envisions the crash in his head and plays out the scene slowly. The metal twisted around the body of the convertible, the popped wheel and broken windshield. He shakes off the thought and continues driving, now upset by the concept he created in his mind. He can't distract himself from himself. There was nothing to drown out his perception of his own ideations. He can't clear his head. He's trapped within himself. Finley screams and pulls the car over. The wheels spin angrily against the dirt on the shoulder. He bangs the steering wheel with a fist and groans. He hears the sound of sirens and looks in the mirror. He didn't notice the police officer that pulled a U-turn at the last intersection. He didn't see the car behind him getting closer and closer. He watches as a police officer steps out of his squad car and aims a gun at his Corvette. Now what? This isn't part of his plan. He licks his lips and glares at his new challenge. He throws the car into drive and slams on the gas pedal. The car lurches forward and spins wildly back on the road. The cop calls it in and drives after Finley. The 2-lane road was barren. The twists and turns makes Finley feel he was back on a roller coaster without the strangers. The contents of his stomach sloshes around. Well, this is great. He wanders ahead, trying to come up with a plan. He didn't know these streets that well, and another police car pulls up alongside Finley. He kicks up the speed and lets out a yelp as the car responds. They race down the street. The sirens blare loudly. Finley watches as the police cars serve and drive around each other like synchronized swimmers after him. These guys are good, but not as good as me. I need to lose them. He thinks about car chase videos he's watched online and in movies. The bad guy always gets caught somehow, with some small mistake he plans to avoid. He turns down a dirt road quickly, but the cars behind don't falter and follow him. The dirt is slick on the wheels, and with the sharp turn, he flips the car. He curses himself as the car rolls into the ditch upside down. The sound of scrapping metal pierces his ears. It's quiet for a moment as the dust settles. He wasn't going to get caught. Especially now, they will find out exactly how many people he's robbed. He isn't planning on going to jail. Edison would miss him. "Step out of the vehicle with your hands in the air," the officer shouts, spit flying out of his mouth. They were behind open car doors, ready for Finley to react. Finley's heart races as his hands went for the unloaded gun. "You'll never take me alive, coppers," he shouts in his mind. He smiles. He was on the track and field team in high school. Surely he could outrun the police. He's done it before, with success. He pushes the car door open, and without thinking, Finley hops out the car and runs, pointing the gun behind him. His feet slip on the loose gravel, but he collects himself and moves his feet fast underneath him. He takes 3 more steps away from the police, gun heavy in his hands. Bang! The silence is deafening. The quiet witness. Ava Winter had always been defined by her words. They were her weapon, her shield, her very identity. As a journalist, she had built her career on exposing truths hidden beneath layers of deceit. Her voice, steady, compelling, unmistakable, had won her awards and opened doors to places most people could only dream of. But now it was gone. How did this happen to me? She wondered, her eyes tracing the blank walls of her small, lifeless apartment. Each morning felt like waking into a nightmare she couldn't escape. For 6 months, she had tried to piece together the shattered fragments of her existence, but nothing seemed to fit. How could she move forward when the very thing that had defined her, her voice, was lost? I used to fill rooms with my words. Now, I can't even manage a whisper. Her friends had stopped calling within weeks, unsure of how to navigate the silence that now consumed her life. Ava understood, but their absence still stung. Who wants to sit in awkward silence with someone who was once the loudest in the room? Bitterness coiled through her thoughts, uninvited but persistent. Morning light seeped through the blinds, casting faint, pale stripes across the apartment's barren walls. The fragile glow barely softened the dullness that enveloped her. Her once crowded bookshelves, filled with dog-eared biographies and neatly stacked notebooks, now stood half empty. Their contents were crammed haphazardly into boxes scattered across the floor, a reflection of the disarray in her heart. Her fingers drifted to the edge of the nightstand, brushing against its surface as she reached for her phone. She froze mid-motion at the sight of the blank screen. No texts, no missed calls, no one left to call anyway, she thought, the sharp ache of loneliness settling heavily in her chest. In her loneliest moments, Ava turned to her journal. Her pen flew across the pages, spilling out the thoughts she could no longer voice. At first, the words felt hollow, like whispers of a life slipping further from her grasp. But over time, they became her anchor, a fragile thread connecting her to the person she once was. Her gaze often drifted to a framed photo teetering on the edge of the bookshelf. Taken 2 years earlier, it captured a time when her life brimmed with purpose. Her byline had graced the city's most prominent publications, her career thriving. In the photo, she stood on a balcony overlooking the bustling downtown streets, microphone in hand, laughing with unrestrained joy. The memory clawed at her heart. I used to own every room I walked into. Now, I'm trapped in this one, swallowing me whole. Ava's fingers grazed the leather-bound journal, resting on her desk. She flipped it open, watching as the transformation unfolded before her eyes. Once neatly penned entries filled with hopeful plans and promises had turned into chaotic scribbles and unfinished thoughts. The journal had become more than a daily ritual. It was her lifeline, a fragile thread connecting her to a reality she feared was slipping away. Even as she poured her thoughts onto its pages, the oppressive stillness of the room closed in around her, heavy and stifling. Tightening her grip on the pen, she thought, "How did this happen to me?" With deliberate strokes, she scrawled 2 words across the page. "Still here." She stared at them, letting the silence stretch, their uncertain and resolute meaning. The park had become her only refuge from the stifling walls of her apartment. She appreciated how the trees muffled the city's constant noise, providing a space where the silence felt peaceful rather than overwhelming. The biting winter air stung her cheeks as she wandered along the familiar path, her boots crunching over frost-covered grass. Skeletal trees creaked softly in the wind, their shadows reaching across the ground like long fingers. Tightening her scarf against the cold, the rough wool grazing her skin, Ava was about to head home when she noticed them. Near the frozen lake, 2 figures stood, silhouetted against the faint glow of a nearby lamppost. At first glance, Ava assumed they were lovers, drawn to the romance of the icy night. But as she moved closer, the scene shifted. The man loomed over the woman, his movements sharp and aggressive, cutting through the stillness like a blade. The woman shrank back, arms crossed tightly, her posture tense and defensive. Ava froze, her breath crystallizing in the frigid air as unease coiled tightly in her chest. Her heart thudded as she squinted into the darkness, trying to make sense of the scene. The woman tilted her head slightly, her voice, if she spoke, too faint to rise above the biting wind. Ava hesitated, her feet faltering as the weight of the stillness pressed down around her, heavy and foreboding. "It's not my business," Ava told herself, her stomach twisting uneasily. Despite the thought, her feet carried her forward. Almost automatically, she slipped off the path, her boots sinking into the frozen grass as she ducked behind a tree. Gripping its rough bark with trembling fingers, she peered out from the shadows, her pulse quickening. The man's sharp, angry voice sliced through the icy stillness, though the wind scattered his words before they could reach her fully. Ava squinted into the dim light. The woman stood rigid, her arms crossed tightly, her posture defensive. Her responses, soft and hesitant, were little more than fragments that dissolved in the biting wind. Ava's chest tightened. Something's wrong. Do something. But what? I can't even. Her thoughts shattered as the man lunged, shoving the woman with brutal force. Ava's breath caught as the woman slipped on the ice. For one excruciating moment, time seemed to stop. The air stood still, the world eerily frozen, until the fragile frost beneath the woman cracked. The sound was sharp and jarring, like breaking glass. A splash shattered the silence as the woman disappeared into the frigid, dark water. Panic surged through Ava like a tidal wave. Scream. Call for help. Do something, she begged herself, but her voice refused to come, locked deep within the recesses of her mind. Desperation set in as her shaking hands fumbled in her pocket. After a frantic struggle, she pulled out her phone and hit the record button, her fingers trembling against the icy metal. Then he turned. The man's head snapped toward her, and their gazes locked with unnerving precision. There, in the dim light, Ava felt the intensity of his stare, piercing, calculated, and merciless. It cut through the darkness, striking at the core of her fear. Her stomach clenched with unease. He sees me. He knows, I saw. He stepped toward her, his boots crunching loudly on the frosted ground. Ava didn't wait to see what would come next. Her legs jolted into motion, slipping and sliding as she bolted back toward the path. Her breaths came in short, ragged bursts, her heart pounding like a frantic drumbeat as the icy air seared her lungs. Later, Ava sat at her desk, staring at the blurry video looping on her laptop screen. Barely 10 seconds long, the shaky footage revealed almost nothing. The man's face was lost in a haze, and the woman's fall disappeared into the shadows. It's not enough, she thought bitterly, frustration coiling in her stomach like a spring. Clenching her fists tightly, she replayed the scene again. I saw it happen. I know what I saw. Why isn't that enough? She had gone to the police, but their skepticism had been palpable. Unable to speak, Ava resorted to scribbling frantic notes, pointing at her phone and gesturing in sheer desperation. Yet her efforts were met with dismissive questions. Why hadn't she called for help? Why was the video so unclear? Did she even know the people involved? By the end of the interview, Ava felt like the one under suspicion, the weight of their doubts pressing heavily on her. Back in her apartment, anger simmered beneath the surface. Her notepad lay open on the cluttered desk, its pages littered with hastily scrawled thoughts and disjointed leads. As she tapped her pen against the edge of the desk, the scene replayed vividly in her mind. How could they dismiss it so quickly? She thought, her chest tightening. You were there. You saw it. Isn't that enough? But the memory of the detective's dismissive tone echoed, fueling the frustration building inside her. Ava slammed the notepad shut. This is why I became a journalist, to expose people like him, to give a voice to the powerless. And now, I'm the one without a voice. Her laptop screen flickered. The video paused on the shadowy outline of the man by the frozen lake. No features, no clarity, just darkness. Ava clenched her fists, biting back the doubt, gnawing at her resolve. Not enough, she thought bitterly, as she grabbed her pen and scrawled the words across her notepad with such force that the paper tore. Her hands trembled as the detective's words replayed in her mind. A blurry video isn't much to go on. Without more, there's not much we can do. Tears prickled her eyes. They think I'm delusional. They think I imagined it all. Helpless. Powerless. She swallowed hard, her throat tightening. You're not helpless. You've never been helpless. Her reflection in the window caught her eye, tense and weary. She leaned against the wall, inhaling deeply, her fists still clenched. This is why you don't quit, she reminded herself. Because people like him can't get away with this. You can't let them win. A sharp chime from her computer broke the heavy stillness. Crossing the room, Ava froze when she saw the sender's name. Lucas. Her breath hitched. A flicker of something she hadn't felt in months breaking through the haze. Hope. His response was brief, but direct. And it ignited something in her. You're not doing this alone anymore. Lucas had been there during her prime. One of the few who understood her dogged pursuit of the truth. Now, he was ready to help. Together, they began unraveling Victor Hayes's carefully concealed life. Corruption, intimidation, a pattern of calculated violence cloaked behind a polished facade. Each new revelation strengthened Ava's resolve. She stared at a photo of one of Victor's previous victims, her fingers gripping its edges. He's done this before, and no one stopped him. That changes now. Memories flickered like faint echoes. Raised voices, papers scattered across a desk, a room cloaked in shadow. Ava pressed her hands to her temples, trying to grasp the elusive fragments. Think. What did you see? What did you hear? But the harder she tried, the more the details seemed to slip through her fingers, like grains of sand. Still, one truth emerged from the fog. The night you lost your voice wasn't random. It's tied to all of this. It's tied to him. With Lucas's help, Ava tracked down an old source, a woman who had once worked closely with Victor. They met in a quiet cafe, where the soft murmur of conversation only heightened the tension between them. The cafe's low buzz and clatter of mugs softened, fading beneath the chaos in Ava's mind. She gripped her notepad, knuckles white, as her gaze darted between the woman's trembling hands and the window. She wouldn't stop watching. Across the table, the woman stirred her tea with deliberate slowness, her hands trembling faintly, despite the blank mask on her face. "You don't understand yet," she murmured, her voice tight and low. Her eyes flicked to the window, watching it intently, as if expecting someone to burst in. "But you will soon." Ava's stomach churned, tightening painfully. Her pulse hammered in her ears, drowning out the comforting hum of the cafe. Slowly, she picked up her notepad from the table, and scribbled a question. She slid it toward the woman, her hand steady despite her pounding heart. "What do you mean?" she'd written. The woman leaned closer, her face now inches from Ava's, her gaze piercing and intense. Ava shifted in her seat, the unease tightening its grip. "I shouldn't be here," the woman whispered, her breath quick and unsteady. "They'll know I've talked." Her words landed heavily in Ava's chest, leaving her breathless. Her fingers twitched, reaching for a steadiness she couldn't find. Slowly, she picked up her notepad and wrote the question with deliberate strokes. She held it up, her eyes locking with the woman's. "Why me?" The woman hesitated, her hands fidgeting with the edges of her napkin, tearing it into frayed strips. She glanced at Ava, guilt and resignation flickering in her eyes, before quickly looking away. Her trembling hands gripped her cup, her voice shaky as she spoke. Ava studied her closely, her pen gliding across the page. "Look at her. She's scared, just like you were, just like so many others. But she's here. She's talking. That means something." Lucas asked the questions Ava couldn't, drawing out details she hadn't dared to hope for. By the end, the truth was undeniable. Victor's immaculate public image was a facade upheld by manipulation and fear. Ava stared at her notes, her breath hitching as her eyes landed on the name scrawled in the corner of an earlier entry. Victor Hayes. With measured movements, she wrote on her notepad and slid it toward Lucas. "We need to meet him." Lucas read the words, his jaw tightening before he nodded. "We'll choose a location where he won't feel entirely in control," he said, his voice low and deliberate. Turning to the woman, he added, "Thank you. You've done more than you know." The woman nodded faintly, her hands gripping her cup. Ava's heart pounded as she absorbed the gravity of what lay ahead. Meeting Victor meant stepping directly into the fire, but it was the only way forward, the only way to bring the truth to light. Her resolve sharpened as she scribbled on the notepad once more. "We need to confront him." Lucas glanced at her words and nodded resolutely. "If we're doing this, we have to be strategic. We need neutral ground, somewhere he'll come but won't own." The theater was his idea. "It's neutral ground," he said. "Somewhere he'll come, but not somewhere he'll own." Ava wasn't convinced. What if he doesn't show? She'd written on the pad between them, her pen pressing into the paper with doubt. "He will," Lucas had replied, leaning closer, his voice steady. "He'll want to see the pieces for himself. He can't resist thinking he can still control the outcome." And so, the message was sent, its contents carefully constructed to lure Victor out. The stage was set, both figuratively and literally, for the confrontation that Ava knew could change everything. Now, as she stood in the hollow shell of the theater, its grand interior reduced to shadows and decay, the weight of that choice settled heavily on her. Dust motes danced in the dim light streaming through cracked windows, and the faint creak of old floorboards echoed in the cavernous emptiness. Her evidence was meticulously laid out before her on the stage, each piece feeling like a fragile lifeline, a thread connecting her to the truth. And then, the sound of polished shoes clicking against the floor broke the stillness. Each step deliberate, each echo sharper than the last. Victor Hayes emerged from the shadows at the back of the theater, his presence filling the room before he even reached the stage. He stopped a few feet away, the cool glint in his eyes pinning Ava in place. His suit, pristine and unyielding, seemed to mirror his demeanor. Impeccable, yet menacing. "You should have stayed quiet," Victor said. His voice was soft, almost conversational, but the menace beneath it rippled like a storm just beneath the surface. Ava's breath caught, her fingers curling at her sides as she steadied herself. The weight of his presence was suffocating, but she forced herself to meet his gaze, refusing to look away. Inside, her thoughts sharpened, cutting through the fear. "I don't need a voice to bring you down. My story is louder than you'll ever be." Victor's smile was faint, more an indication of control than amusement. "This," he said, gesturing to the evidence before her with a flick of his hand, "isn't going to change anything. You think you've won, but you don't understand how the game works." Lucas stepped forward, breaking the tension momentarily, as he began presenting the truth piece by piece. His voice was firm and steady, and for the first time, Ava saw Victor's polished exterior begin to fracture. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing ever so slightly as each revelation chipped away at his armor. "You don't understand what you're doing," Victor said finally, his tone cutting and sharp now. "You think justice is on your side. You're in over your head." But Ava didn't flinch. As the cracks in Victor's facade grew, a strange calm settled over her. Her silence, once a source of despair and weakness, now felt like an unassailable wall. This was the moment she had fought for. The truth was out, and it was louder than anything Victor could say or do. She stood taller, her composure unbroken. "This is it. This is why you fought so hard. This is what they can't take from you," she thought, the strength in her resolve radiating outward. Victor stepped back, the calculated anger in his eyes barely contained. For the first time, it was clear. He wasn't in control anymore, and Ava, with her silence and the undeniable power of truth, had turned the tide. She had proven that even without words, her voice could echo louder than his threats ever could. "To the person who buys my house, months ago, I uprooted my entire life and moved across the country with very little plan. My wife left me out of the blue. With no tether, I cashed out my 401k and threw caution to the wind. I drove until I saw snow before deciding to try out the small town life. After nailing down a full-time job and growing tired of life in the town's only hotel, I reached out to a realtor and asked her to show me the house that's been on the market the longest. A fixer-upper was just what I needed. The realtor didn't have much information on the home outside of the basics, but I was sold as soon as I saw it. 3 stories, isolated deep in the woods. What more could a man looking to start over with a project ask for? After closing, I was given a fill folder containing all the important information. With all the standard documents was a handwritten letter from the previous homeowner. The contents of the letter have me questioning if I made the right choice, but I've never been one to turn down a challenge. I have typed the contents of the letter below. To the person who buys my house, congratulations on the purchase of your new home. Or perhaps, should I say, you're welcome for your new home. I can only imagine what type of person you may be. A first-time home buyer? A newlywed couple just starting out? A growing family looking for more space? A retiree longing to be away from the hustle and bustle of the city? Or even just an investor looking for rental properties? The possibilities are endless, but no less exciting. Just as exciting as when my late husband and I first purchased the property so many years ago. The tree covering so far off the main road made such a serene setting. We just couldn't picture ourselves living anywhere else. However, all things must come to an end. Such is life. I'm not as young as I once was. My children worried for me out here all alone. Or so they say. My oldest daughter decided the property was too much for me to care for on my own anymore, and encouraged me to move to the old folks' home in the next town. As loath as I was to leave the home we spent such wonderful years in, I could no longer argue with her. The upkeep was getting to be a little much for these old bones. I agreed on one condition: that the home not be put up for sale until my death. So, if you are receiving this letter, I have shuffled off this mortal coil. That also means that the house has most likely sat vacant for some time. In that case, there are a few matters of housekeeping you should be aware of. As you may have noticed when you viewed the property, the house is quite the old gal. Her 3 stories stand tall and formidable in the dense forest surrounding it. Though the trees tower over her, she will not be cowed. The roof has held up better than we ever expected with so many trees around. It was replaced in 2018, another urging of my oldest daughter. Though it had only a few cosmetic issues at the time, the trees closest to the home are sturdy, and hardly ever dare to drop their branches directly on the roof. By the time you move in, it may be time for a fresh coat of paint, though I found the house does prefer to be a light blue with white trim. She likes to stand out amongst the darkness of the forest. I'll never forget the way the old gal gleamed at Christmas time, with string lights shining bright enough to light up the snow all around. Oh, I do hope you have the most wondrous Christmases there. Anyway, I've gotten off track. Yes, the house will require a new coat of paint, and I'm sure you will decorate the inside as you see fit. Before you start to move too much around, be aware that some of the items in the house have been strategically placed. For you to fully understand what a treasure you have just purchased, I feel it is pertinent for me to tell you a little story. My Reginald and I purchased the home fully furnished before any of our children were brought into this world. The first year we lived there was pure bliss. Young and in love, we dedicated almost all of our time to each other. My husband fondly referred to this time as our honeymoon phase. One of our favorite activities was exploring the vast property surrounding us. When the weather did not permit roaming, we explored the home itself, though from the outside it appears as any manor in the woods would. Inside is much to be discovered. During that first year, we enjoyed the convenience of it being fully furnished and move-in ready. But over time, I yearned to decorate, to make the space my own. Reginald, ever the obedient husband, humored me. We started by taking down every painting that hung on the walls, deciding which to keep, which to sell away, and which to simply move to a different area. That is when the first odd discovery was made. Behind a great many of the paintings, there were holes, right in the plaster walls. Some appeared to be methodically cut in perfect squares. Others, as though a fist was punched straight through it. We, of course, decided that those would eventually be covered back up. I piled the painting up in the drawing room and set about cleaning the walls. By the end of the day, I had yet to decide on what exactly to do with them. So I let them lie and went to bed. In the morning, however, they were all hung perfectly back in their spots, as if all my work had never happened. For days, I assumed Reginald had done it, and he assumed I had. We ultimately didn't speak of it until it was too late. When my Reginald started back to work as supervisor of the factory in town, I resumed my endeavor to make the home feel like it was mine. I hated the big rugs scattered all around the place. I've always preferred a nice hardwood floor. No need for carpets that hold all the dirt and hair that's dragged in. The furniture was easy enough to move out of my way, and the rugs all rolled up nicely. I was mighty proud of my hard work, until I got a good look at the wood. Large, dark, discolored splotches marred what should have been beautiful hardwood hiding under those ghastly rugs, which I'm sure you've seen. Unfortunately, much like the paintings, the rugs remained. I'd go into more detail, but some of the full truths have been lost to time. But I will tell you, be careful what you look behind or under. Though the house allowed me to dust and paint and add decor as my heart desired, it did not allow me to leave any of its secret spots uncovered. Behind dressers, cabinets, doors, paintings, mirrors, and under couches, chairs, and beds, the house hides. After the first year, I gave up trying to rearrange and became content with adding a few of my own touches here and there. I think that once the house realized I'd stopped trying to change it so much, it settled down. For a while at least, we entered a time of peace again. But the monotony of loneliness began to get to me. Thankfully, we soon welcomed our oldest daughter. As soon as she arrived, the house awoke with laughter and joy. All hours of the night, she would giggle, and the house seemed to echo with it, those echoes long lingering even after she fell asleep. As we welcomed more children, it seemed that no matter how much we tied, the house remained scattered with toys. It was as if I'd turn my back and they'd all jump right off the shelf and resume their places on the floor. The never-ending chore of putting away made me weary to my bones. In a stroke of wisdom, my Reginald decided one summer to send the children to my mother's for a week. She lived on the coast, never one for the colder air where we chose to live. We didn't see her often, and the children did love her so. Off they went without a complaint, leaving my love and I alone for the first time in over a decade. We didn't know what to do with ourselves. That first night, it was as if we were newlyweds again. But I won't traumatize you with any of that. We felt so young again, only waking when the sun finally shone through our bedroom window, with no rush to feed the masses. When we finally emerged from our bed a little after noon, we walked into an unexpected scene. Every toy, book, pen, shoe, and piece of sports equipment that belonged to the children had been strewn about the first floor in the most uncivilized manner. There was no question that the house had been perfectly clean the night before. Our first thought was that we'd been burgled, that someone had broken in, thinking we'd all left for the coast. The only problem is, we told no one the children were leaving, and we had no neighbors to have noticed their departure. Regardless, we checked for signs of forced entry on all the doors and windows. Finding nothing, we were forced to believe it was whatever force we had once felt in our home, agitated with us once more. As you've probably ascertained, the house is very particular. We had come to accept not being able to move the furniture or pictures, but were only just realizing that the house did not like many of the new things we'd brought in either. How many times had I picked certain toys up off the floor, only to find them there again in the morning? How many times had I unfairly blamed the children for messes they claimed they knew nothing about? That morning, we saw the truth of the matter, and I knew something had to change. The children didn't deserve my anger or anxiety. They were not to blame. When they returned, I was sure to tell them as much. But before then, we had to find a way to coexist again with the forces in the house. What should have been a week of relaxation and reconnecting became a week of trial and error. On the first day, we tidied the house, putting everything back where we thought everything should go. Each room made perfect. Then we waited for the first item to fall out of place. As if the house was testing us, it took hours for anything to happen that first day. Then it started, slowly at first, giving us time to notice the items that were out of place, time to correct. It seemed to go in order of the things that bothered it the most, or maybe just the longest. The first toy to go was a set of bells we'd gotten when our oldest was small. The set was a popular toy amongst all our babies. With our youngest being nearly 8 at the time, these bells hadn't truly rung joyously through the house in years, yet they always made their way off the shelf onto the rug. Our family's peace was more important than any sentimentality, or at least that's what my husband and I agreed. And into the bin they went. Quickly, we noticed patterns. Toys that made too much noise. Shoes that left scuffs on the floor. Sports equipment that may or may not have been involved in a few broken windows and busted light bulbs. Books that sat too heavy on the overburdened bookshelves. Room by room we went, removing any and all items the house found to be offensive. It was by no means an easy undertaking. So many items had many more years of use left in them. But knowing what I knew, I could no longer sacrifice my sanity for a few boxes full of possessions. When the last box of offending items left the property, it was as if the house itself took a deep, calming breath. I hadn't quite realized just how stressed I'd been feeling until I didn't feel it anymore. Weight I'd grown accustomed to bearing eased off my shoulders. The air was lighter, the lights were brighter, and the house even seemed to smell better. Not that there was a noticeable bad smell before. Everything just felt better. That night, Reginald and I slept deeply for the first time in years, waking refreshed and ready for anything. I was ready for my children to come home. This week had been the longest we'd been apart since the youngest was born. I'd spent 2 weeks in the hospital that time, but that's neither here nor there. We had 2 more days before my mother would return them to us, sun-kissed and spoiled rotten in the best way. In those 2 days, I made time to sit quietly and listen to the house the way I used to when it was just Reginald and myself. Familiar creaks and groans greeted my ears. My senses were filled with the house. The smell of wood, water, earth, detergents, fabric, food, all seemed to swirl around me. For a long while, it was all just the normal feelings of home, of any home. Every house I'd ever lived in had the same smells and sounds. I assume every house in the whole world has the same base set of smells, sounds, and lights. I knew there was something past that, though, here. So I waited. A few months back, I'd read a book on meditation, hoping to help lift some of the stress I'd been buried under. While I waited, I took a few quests from my readings. I methodically relaxed each muscle, starting at my toes and working my way to my head. I felt each breath as it traveled in and out of my lungs. I tried to tune my ears inward to listen to the beating of my heart, attempting to hear the blood rushing through my veins. That's when I finally heard the breathing. It wasn't my own. It was off-beat of mine. Reginald wasn't home. We had no pets, but the slow, deep, steady breaths were just a whisper in my ear. I focused with all my might on the sound, hoping to pinpoint the direction it was coming from. Realization dawned on me. I was all around me, as if I was inside a lung. Then, a heartbeat, slower than my own, reverberated around me. Slowly, I opened my eyes. What I saw changed everything. Ever so lightly, the walls billowed in and out. Ever so slightly, the chandelier above my head rhythmically bobbed, as if contracting, thrumming. Everything in the central family room moved in a steady beat. How many days had we spent in this room? The majority of our lives circulated in this room, where we were most often all together as a family, the way a family room should be used. We often joked that this room was the heart of the house, because there was always so much love here. We were not wrong. This room truly holds the heart of the home. You may think I'm crazy, but I am telling you, here and now, the house is alive. It is not haunted. There are no goblins or ghouls. The house itself is a living, breathing being, a being that I have cared for, just as it has cared for me, for more years than I care to count. You see, my daughter never believed. She did not understand. When I finally agreed that I was too old to care for the house on my own, it was because the house told me so. Not her. I was growing too old to care for it, and in turn, it could no longer care for me. It needs someone younger, someone to breathe new life into it again. And if you care for it, it will care for you. When tended to properly, it will multiply your life and give you more than you can ever imagine. I do hope Carmen found the right person to take on the challenge. I pray the house does not miss us too terribly much. If you follow the rules, then it should grow to love you, too, I'm sure. With love, Cynthia. Rule 1. Don't move the furniture. Rule 2. Don't leave any holes uncovered. Rule 3. Don't make changes. Only fix things that break. Rule 4. Don't put anything on the mantel in the bedroom. Rule 5. Never throw balls inside. Rule 6. Never scream at your partner inside. On the grounds is fine. Rule 7. Always walk gently. Rule 8. Always lock the doors. Rule 9. Always listen to the house. Take care of it, and it will take care of you. I have lived in the house for a week now. What I thought to be the ramblings of a crazy old woman who wanted nothing more than to stay with her home have quickly become undeniable truths. On my second night, the house welcomed me in a way only it could have. I'm not sure if this makes me just as crazy as her, but I vowed to care for this home as long as it cares for me. We're off to a great start.